Good morning. Yeah, it's always good to be back with you again. Holy Week 2025. We've gone through Palm Sunday last Sunday, and of course we're in that interim time between um, the now and the not yet, and that's um, it's a very good time. We have reason to be happy of what this week represents. And it's through the process of letting go. It's I taught on Sunday, and the way I opened up is that Palm Sunday represents our perspective and our self-convincing that we go through in order to define things as we think they ought to be. The Palm Sunday. Um, Easter represents how things really are, and to the extent of which God loves all of humanity and creation. The interim now within this Holy Week is about exercising, letting go of my own self construct in order to embrace what is actually true. We're going to be taught, we talk about this over and over. We're seeing this in the person of Jesus. And this morning, we're going to be contrasting these two ideals as seen within the text, and I'm calling it two ways. Two ways. Last time we examined where evil begins. I'm transposing the idea of Judas. I think Judas did some horrible things, really made some bad choices, and I think that there is a Judas mentality that it's certainly how I have reacted in the past, not to the same degree as Judas, but it's the same destructive tendencies that I know that I have within me, and I think it transposes to all humanity. So I'm looking at Judas is yes, as a person of what is going on within our story, but also representing a larger construct, a larger way of thinking, and I'm calling it the Judas perspective. So um, what his actions have led to is evil, and I think we all buy that. How it builds, what it looks like, is what we looked at last week. And I looked at this graphic. I chose this graphic because I think it's really pertains to the whole idea. Judas started with a gift. He had a gift of being with Jesus, knowing the place. He builds his own reality from that gift. He acquires support for his reality that he's built in his head, and then self equips with lanterns, torches, and weapons, as we see within the text. And finally, I got to move it so I can read it. This represents what we people tend to do to others. So it's like it shows as a triangle, but think of it as a solid object, a pyramid. And it starts small, kind of like the iceberg idea. It starts small, but it extrapolates into something evil. So this is how evil grows, a very simple illustration. It starts from a gift. A gift. Everything you and I have is a gift. And what we do with that gift really matters. Judas took his gift and he built his own reality from that gift. And that's where it really started to go south. So that's really the thing that we're going to be looking at this morning, contrasting this way of thinking, the Judas construct, with what Jesus is demonstrating within the text. The text reads, Jesus, therefore, knowing all the things that were coming upon him. The text states it, and I believe it. I believe Jesus knew exactly what was going to occur within the next 3 days. Um, and of course, the overall comment on that is for the joy that was set before him. he went forth and said to them, "Whom do you seek?" Now, this is taking place within the garden as the arresting entourage has um, come to that place. Overview in verse 2, last week or week before, we read Judas knew the place. So it would have been last week. He knew the place. And again, that was a gift. Here in verse 4, Jesus knew all things. So there's a commonality between the two. Judas knew the place. Jesus knew all things coming upon him. So let's use that as our launching pad and jump off. I've created two scenarios, the two ways. The one on the left represents Judas, and the one on the right represents Jesus. This globe is just simply to house the components of each of the two. So that's why I used the globe. Judas knew the place. Jesus knew all that was coming. Now we're gonna do a contrast. Knowledge, this knowledge had been given to him, as we've already talked about, is a gift. That knowledge, the fact that he was with Jesus, the fact that he knew the place of their meditation and privateness and communion with God, that was given to him as a gift. The place where the arrest has taken place. On the right-hand side, that is true as well. Jesus knew what was coming to him because that knowledge had been given to him as well. Now, that would be, we're talking about the, God and man, and we get kind of cloudy in that whole thing, which I certainly admit. But I think it's safe to say Jesus, through self-admission, to say all things have been given to him from the Father. That's a loose paraphrase, but I think it really reflects Jesus of Nazareth on how he perceived things. Everything is a gift. Thus, we have two gifts. We have the one on the right, Jesus knowing the place, and the one on Judas, and then Jesus on the right, Judas on the left. No, I got confused on left, right there for a minute. It kind of happens. Knowing the place, and on the right, Jesus knowing all that is coming his way. Now, there's an outflow of this truth here. And what Judas does within the story is he directs his knowledge, his gift, through his self-created construct. It's what he's creating. That was illustrated prior by the pyramid. He's taking what he has and he's using it to the best of his abilities, how he has created it in his head. Judas thinks he's doing the right thing. He thinks he's doing the bigger picture, contributing to the bigger picture, forcing, I believe Judas is thinking he's forcing the issue so the reluctant leader will take the throne, generally speaking. On the right, Jesus, now this is where the contrast comes in. Jesus directed his knowledge, the gift that was given to him, through his relationship with the Father. All things come to him through the Father, according to Jesus. So now he directed his knowledge. We're taking this idea further. He directed his knowledge, as stated on the prior slide, through self-directed construct. What is true of this construct is that it is turned inward towards Judas, inward toward the self-perceived betterment of the self. It's what Judas has created through the years of being with Jesus, the interaction, his his perception of how it ought to come down. And so he turns that and creates a scenario that he can help. And so therefore he's actually in his mind thinking that he's doing goodness through this whole act. And that is what is so destructive and so sad. The outflow of this, or the outcome, the result of this construct, can be recognized by lanterns, torches, and weapons. And I think this is where we can draw the application. For someone on this destructive journey, it always ends up with lanterns, torches, and weapons. In our nice Christian boxes that we create ourselves, it's theological rightness, it's our position. It's me. I am right and you are wrong, and I reject you because you don't think like I do. It's it's part of our history and it's part of our experience right here and now, and it can be lanterns. I've got to have my position, my right position. Torches, I'm going to snuff you out and create error. I want to create the error in you. And weapons, I'm going to defend my position and my stance. This is how it shows up within a Christian and religious, broader religious construct. And it's really sad. This would be what I would call the Judas mentality or the Judas construct. In contrast, on the right-hand side in the text, we see Jesus, again, this is stating what was on the prior slide. He directed his knowledge gift through his relationship with the Father. Everything is about his relationship with the Father. What is true of his construct is that it is turned outward toward the betterment of the other. Entirely different. I mean, we're talking 180-degree shift here. It's not about self-protection and self-embellishment and the needing to be right, which is demonstrated on the left. Rather, it is about the other. And I will go into that here in a minute. So, because of this, his construct prompts a question. It's a question. Jesus, we know he's the master of questions. And this question is designed so that the other can understand himself. You know, what are you doing? That's how I see it. And I'll get into more detail in a minute. So that question is, whom do you seek? Who is it, fellas, you seek? So here is the disparity between the left and the right. Side note, from a little bigger context here, Jesus went forth in verse 1. It says Jesus went forth. We looked at that 2 weeks ago. Here in verse 4, it says it again. Jesus went forth. That's really important language. We know from this text, Jesus knows everything that's about to come upon him, and so do we. I mean, at least to some degree. This language, the author of the book, is letting us into the heart of Jesus, which I believe reflects the heart of God. This language, Jesus went forth, communicates his resolve to engage what is next. He's not skirting the issue. His resolve is seen to be self-directed, voluntarily. He's voluntarily doing this. No one is hauling him around. and entirely motivated out of love. Everything he has been talking about is about the idea of love. Jesus is moving within the realm of love and he's moving forward, and he's moving uh, motivated entirely out of love. And he says, to rewind back to John 10, no one takes my life. Jesus is not being forced to do this, but he is doing it out of an act of love for all of humanity. No one takes my life. An alternative response could have been, what's the use with dealing with these people? And throwing up his hands and walking away. I think I would. What I mean, this is too hard. Why should I put myself through this for these? The only answer to that is love. He loves us. He loves humanity. And that's the only reason. Thus, what we see him going forth. On the left-hand side and on the right-hand side, we see them both receiving a gift. On the left-hand side, Judas uses that gift directed by his own head to control that gift for what he thinks is betterment to himself and the world. On the right-hand side, it's entirely contrary. Jesus is letting go. For the joy set before him, everything, the grain of wheat falling into the ground and dying, and if it dies, it bears much fruit. If anything is out there about life in the here and now, death is a way to life. The resurrection that we're going to celebrate, it happened once, and it can happen every single day. As the grain of wheat dies in me, and I let go of what's in my head and receive the truth, there is life. Letting go. On the left-hand side, through holding on, through control, it's leading to violence. Lanterns, torches, and weapons, that imagery. Violence is on the left, and on the right is a bringing together. That's what Jesus is about to do, a bringing together. Now, last week we looked at, this is a really important text, and I'm going to refer it to again. John brought up some great questions last week. And in this text in John 11:49 through 53, it's twofold. There's the initial perception from Caiaphas, the high priest. He's gone through years and years of ministry and has inherited a tradition. And he knows that this tradition, through the sacrifice of one or many, depending on the sacrifice of animals, and through the shedding of blood, it brings the people together. And this is what he wants, because he doesn't want problems. If he has problems demonstrated through disunity of the people, then the Roman soldiers come down and will take away his whole future. So he's interested in the peace, the way he sees it. One of them, Caiaphas, who was high priest that year, said to them, "You know nothing at all. You guys don't get it. Nor are you taking into account that it is in your best interest, folks, that one man die for the people, because it establishes the peace. and that the whole nation not perish under Roman, the thumb of Roman um, dominance. Now, that's how Caiaphas saw it. He saw it as another way to get the people together. However, the writer of John the Apostle, he says, oh, not so fast. There's another deeper meaning to this. There's more going on than meets the eye. Now, he didn't say this on his own. Caiaphas wasn't even aware. But as he was high priest that year, he was prophesying that Jesus was going to die. And going to die is that Jesus is the willing Lamb of God walking to the sacrifice of himself for all of humanity. No one is twisting his arm. He's doing it because he loves us. He was going to die for the nation, and not only for the nation, but in order that he might gather together. There's that term, gather together into one, bring together the children of God who are scattered abroad, so that from that day on they plan to kill him. So the entire intent is the bringing together. And these two circles represent two different ways, two different realities. One is created out of one's head, the other is in relationship to the Father. And there we have the underline right here. And it ties back the gathering together in 1149 emphasizes the intent of Jesus, of God through Jesus, for all of humanity. The question itself, whom do you seek, is next. The meaning of this question can be understood as, what is your desire? What is it? How are you thinking? What is inside motivating your actions? What is your desire? That's how I paraphrase it. This question he's asking far transcends the need for suspect confirmation. Hey, we got to make sure we got the right guy here. That is not the intent from my perspective. Rather, his question is a gift to the other so the other can probe their own desires. Jesus is about the betterment of the other, even in this horrific situation right here. And we could look back. We're not going to look at 138, but at the very beginning of his ministry, when he's calling the disciples, he uses the same kind of question: whom do you seek? Or actually, I think it's what do you seek? What is it you want? What disciple is your desire? What is your desire? Where are you heading? What are your intentions? It's a probing question, and we see it repeated here. The meaning of the question: the receivers of his question are actually seeking unity. And this is, again, I think Judas and the entourage, Caiaphas, the whole group, is if we can have an enemy, we can come together. I want to qualify that. Judas is not out. Judas, in my mind, is there thinking he's doing something for the goodness of all humanity by forcing the issue so Jesus will take his throne. That, again, my perspective. However, they're doing something they think is important and valid. in their heads, however they're construing it. However, they plan to establish this unity through their self created means being enacted, and this is being enacted right before our eyes. And I tie this to Rene Girard's idea of the scapegoat mechanism. He's given it a word, he's given it a phrase. This is what people do to people. If I can create an enemy, or if we can create a common enemy, we can come together. And that is what was important to Caiaphas, and it's going on here at various levels. But this is how I understand it. The question by Jesus is an offer to the other to wake up to what they are doing, to become aware of what they're doing. A side note, and this would be really good to meditate on this week, fellas, the Holy Week. Ponder how preposterous this moment. We have Jesus, the Lamb of God, who's never the only time there has been any what could be called violent action is the cleansing of the temple, which in my mind probably occurred around this time. That's a whole question whether one or two, but I won't go into that. But um, this moment, so maybe maybe it's what's fueling this scale of the arrest party. We're not talking one or two guys, um, a police team. We're talking about an entourage of people coming to Jesus at night with lanterns, torches, and weapons, as if they need weapons. They perceived him as they perceived him. And it's absolutely blown out of scale. It's preposterous. But it's illustrative of what people have done to people throughout all of history. And sometimes it's in the name of God. Not always, but sometimes. Uh, Whether it's a political conflict or whether it's a religious conflict, but people will tend to bear down and go for the jugular, um, and have some means of justification, thus the scapegoat mechanism. And what we see here happening in this garden here, this small little picture of what we're going to look at, and we'll look at more next week, what we see here is core to what is coming next. So in our table time, we got some great time it's 7:35. So in our table time, we've laid out two ways, the one on the left and the one on the right, and I think I've explained it enough. The first way on the left is what is being created in the minds of those seeking the peace. Again, they're seeking the peace. And we could think of this as a self-created box, and it could look like this, illustrating. We build a box around, and it's all designed in beliefs, and over through reinforcement and there's ways that we can create thicker and thicker lines, and that's what's going on to the point where we build a preposterous outcome of the arrest of an overscale. We've got, I don't know how many people were there, but a lot of people. I don't know what the chosen, we got to refer to the chosen, but it's totally out of scale with what is going on. And they're all doing this in the name of seeking the peace. That's what's going on in the left. The second on the right, demonstrated through Jesus, and he is the true peace bringer, as the text, the Bible reads, it calls him the peace bringer. The second is demonstrated by him. He is inviting the other to examine their box. Still, he's not out to defend himself. His point is bringing together. And that's the question, whom do you seek? And that question is designed to cause them to reflect on what they are doing. And so in our discussion, let's talk about this. Well, what are your thoughts on this? And maybe, this is all around us. How do you see these two ways in action? Look at the two different ways. Maybe you've seen some horrific stuff, but maybe you've seen some great stuff too that you could share with us of this idea, these two ideas being, these two ways being contrasted. What are your thoughts? I'm going to grab a drink of water. Bill, yeah, go ahead.
Of course, I've got to speak first. That's my DNA.
You what?
No, I can only think of two words that fit these. And all your time you're talking, that left-hand side, the word that kept coming into my mind was coercion. And the one that kept on the right-hand side was persuasion. And there's a
Huh.
whole difference between those two axes.
Can you talk more about that? I think that's super interesting that you define those two ways as two separate words. Can you talk a little bit more about coercion and persuasion?
Well, coercion, they set up legal processes backed up by the Roman army to say this is what you're going to do, and we're going to, if you don't agree with us, we'll crucify you, and those followers will chase you down. Jesus comes in and says he's always inviting. He's inviting all the time.
Yeah.
And if they're going to kill him, he goes, okay, he invites them to kill him, but he never ever pushes coercion. He never forces anything.
No.
He forces decisions sometimes, but he doesn't force them what decisions to make. Mm-hmm. And that should be where the church currently is, and a big piece of it isn't right now. A big piece of it is trying to set it up through legislation. I can right away move this into the present time, and I see that real clearly.
Legality within, as transposed over to the church, is a huge way that we've been taught to think. Legality, this and this.
And people don't realize legality is violence. I mean, you may pass a law, but it's enforced by the police.
Right.
Down the road, if people don't agree, you're going to call in the powers that be to arrest them or stop them or shoot them, whatever it takes. But you're going to get the job done.
In the name of God.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's all.
Great. Bill, that's a great way to launch out. You put on the left-hand side coercion, and you put on the other side persuasion, and you've made a little more detail of what you mean on that. You guys, do you have comments to Bill's comment to piggyback on that, or do you have other thoughts?
Little sidebar on Bill's comment. AA, Alcoholics Anonymous, would say it's a program of attraction, right? So the church, are we a program of attraction, or this idea of coercion, right? Or even a hardcore persuasion, but it's just a different way of looking at it. But yeah.
Yeah. And like Bill, John, can you talk a little bit more of that coercion?
Oh, I was
see it.
Yeah, I was just reflecting on Bill's thought about that.
Yeah.
Whom do you seek? What are we looking for in life is a big question. And like you said, it's kind of how Jesus started his ministry,
Yeah.
right? So I wonder if how we start our journey, is much like how we end our journey. What are we really looking for? Um,
What
in
are
this?
we for? I like that, John. Rather than what are we against, what are we for? What are your desires? Um, I mean, that's how I paraphrase it. Whom do you see? What do you want? What's inside? And I think as we go that way, that's a big order. And some of it is conscious, most of it is not, unfortunately. So it's painful.
I, I have to add one thing. There's a delicate balance there.
Oh, there always is.
Some things need to be persuaded. I mean, don't kill an innocent person. Well, yeah, you're going to stop someone from doing that. Don't steal from somebody. Yes, you're going to set up a law for that. But on this situation, there's a situation of how are you going to see your God? How are you going to be internally driven to behave, so to speak?
Yeah,
Is it going to come out of the heart, or is it going to come out of fear of punishment?
yeah,
And the left hand side kind of comes out of fear of punishment to behave, and the right hand side comes out of your innate. When you buy into it, when you're persuaded, it's you. You're running. You're deciding to do the right thing. You're not having to be told to do the right thing. It comes
yeah,
out of your core.
yeah, yeah. So there's on the left-hand side, there's a forcing others, and on the right-hand side, there is a adoption and voluntarily arriving at, I'm convinced this is what I want. Is that what you mean by
Yeah,
persuade?
in a way, it's the same goal. In a way, it's peace. It's no peace isn't a good word I like for it, but it's stability. It's allowing society to function.
Yeah,
And of course, Rome, they call the Pax Romana the peace of Rome. There was a peace under Rome, but it was peace being reinforced by the sword.
yeah,
What
yeah.
what keeps us? I need to see some of these other do not talk signs from Vince and Bob and Steve and
Yeah, we'd
Carl.
love
Like,
to hear your thoughts.
come
Thank
on,
you,
guys.
John.
What
Thanks for John. Thanks for helping me. That is so good. I want to. We want to hear from you
I,
guys.
I'm going to give Vince a cup of
Oh,
coffee.
there's Bob. Bob raised his hand. He came to the top of my page. That's good.
He's got to like hit the mute button, Bob. You're still muted.
Um, is to me, I just see this the classic journey of all people. It's maintaining power versus relinquishing power, surrendering. On the left, it's all about maintaining power, the status quo. We don't want to change. But Jesus is, he's part of the mission of making all things new, and he knows that to do that, he has to surrender. He has to basically step aside, and let the creator be the one in control.
Yeah.
Boy, I like that. Mike talks a lot about our journey, like he did that right thing a couple of weeks ago. How we start our journey, and here we are towards the end of our journey, right? And this whole idea of relinquishing control, right? How much of our journey has been about, being in charge and doing it my way, and
Right.
yeah.
Do either or any of you have examples of how you're learning that could help us all? Where have you seen it? How in in our own experiences, how is it, what does it look like to learn to let go?
in relationships with children or your wife or friends. You can't coerce people to like you. You can't
Yeah,
coerce.
that's
Yeah,
right.
you got to persuade them. Or you got to just be yourself. But yeah, I think relationships, and in the long run, there's another thought: is relationships mess with your theology sometimes. You,
I love that. That's
yeah,
great. Or the other way around, our theology messes with our relationships.
Well, John, you've you've kind of proposed an idea. Can you talk more about that?
I'm seeing some people undo their. I'm getting ready to talk now. Vince, I'm going to give Vince a cup of coffee. There you go, Vince. That'll get him going. But Steve's unmuted, so maybe we're going to hear from Steve now.
Oh, Steve's unmuted.
Oh,
Go, Steve.
well, it's interesting to me. Um, Bill sort of elevated this to the level of the church, if you will, and maybe touching on where we're at politically as a country right now. Um, we can push it into the area of personal relationships, which Bill, you also mentioned that, and John, you introduced it. Theology messes with your relationships and vice versa. Just thinking about this, Miriam and I have a friend who's struggling in an adult parental role now that she has adult children, and they haven't. Not all of the children have sought. Whom do you seek? Not all of the children have sought what she has begun to seek years and years ago in terms of her relationship with Christ, and their behaviors don't match what she would desire for them and of them. And a little discussion with her via electronics yesterday. I think her box has several layers, to use your graphic there, Mike.
Yeah.
Because there's a way that this should be done, and I in thinking about this yesterday, I thought in her relationship, and it's easy for me as a non-parent to be critical and judgmental, and be the judge and jury all in one here from a distance, but it doesn't feel like the abundant life that the scriptures have said should be ours. And I just, the when it ends up being coercion, it divides, and it leads to barriers and estranged relationships at best, rather than a bringing together. And I think it's a question that's very personal, and it's also a question right now that I think, with the polarization of our country in terms of politics and the differing views of what methods should be used to bring our country back to being great again, it's on a national level as well. It's a very timely question for all of us.
Thanks, Steve. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you very much. I I don't know your discussion with this friend, but my sense, what I got was that she's got adult children and she's a follower of Jesus, and none of her, or I don't know, maybe one, maybe all, I don't know, all of them are not in alignment with what her expectation was of what a adult child within the faith should look like.
Exactly.
And and she's reaching out to you and Miriam because you're trusted friends. And I'm guessing here is, what can we do to convince them to be followers of Jesus?
Yeah, and she's not really asking for that as much as, there's there's a heartbreak with it
Yeah.
for her. She's
So,
expressing her heart, and it is heartbreaking because it doesn't feel like the abundant life. It feels like a diminished life that's holding on. Um,
To
Easy for me to be judgmental, I'll say that. I
okay,
need grace here.
when you say abundant life, are you referring to what's going on inside your friend's heart and life right now, or in?
I am.
So
Yeah, sorry to interrupt you.
yeah, go ahead and talk about that. We're
Yeah,
talking about the Christian woman, not the kids at this point.
right. You know, her heartache is she wants to pass along what she would call, and I think she's accurate, a godly legacy,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
she's not. She's seeing some of her offspring pursuing paths that she believes does not lead to godliness, and perhaps it doesn't. Um, but the walls, the dark, heavy box around her heart right now, I think is preventing her from. It prevents her from seeing these children um, and the things that are good and abundant in their lives and what God has given to her and her children, even if they are less than what her original desire was to see what her children would be when they reached adulthood. Does that make sense?
It makes perfect sense. And while you were talking, I got another. I'm not putting you on the spot, Steve, but this is like where we live. Um, how do you think, based on what you know about this woman and what she's going through, how do you think the children are perceived by their mother?
Certainly, they are loved deeply, and that's part of it. Is that love is desires their best, um, but I think she's perceiving. I think she's heavily perceiving the side of them that is seen in her in comparison to Scripture and what she believes God has said is the best way to live. She's seeing she's seeing them as less than, um, instead of celebrating what
They are.
sort of what is there,
Yeah.
and persuading them. Well, she's attempting to persuade them, but to me it seems a little bit sort of coercive. She's saying you've got to cross over that heavy line and come into my world, the way I see things, for me to really sort of have fellowship adult to adult with you.
Do you, okay, do you feel the children, however, I don't know how many, do the children, in your opinion, do they feel do they feel they are perceived less than from their mother? Like they
Um,
disappoint
yeah,
their mother.
yeah. One in particular, she has five kids. One in particular, um, who, in a sense, for lack of a better term, has strayed the furthest
Yeah,
from the path that she desires. Uh,
yeah,
it just, you know, yeah. How do we see it?
yeah.
You know,
so
I,
I would interject. This is part of a bigger
Thanks,
thing.
Steve. Thanks, Steve. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, not to let that go, but Jesus,
that's okay.
you got circle bringing together, and I would ask, what keeps us from getting together? What?
Are you asking Steve?
No, I'm asking all of us, and we don't even have to go there. It can just be a rhetorical question. But I think this idea that Jesus is offering, we're looking for this eternal life thing, but there's something bigger going on here. Jesus, you're saying that Jesus let go to bring life, to bring us together. And I would say, what keeps us from, coming together, or being together, or what's What's the underlying problem here? Is it related to who we seek? Is it the problem that, we all grew up with certain traditions, Christian traditions, and they got a box, we got this box around it. And yeah, go ahead, Vince.
Well, my nephew's son, Anthony Gratano, he's an Italian kid,
Wouldn't have known that.
served his first mass last week as an altar boy. He's this little kid. I don't know even how old he is, really. He's 11, maybe 10. And he's so proud of himself, and the family is proud of him. And he's, if you're Roman Catholic background, you know what an altar boy is. It's kind of like an acolyte in the Lutheran church. And he serves the priest, helps with the tasks of the mass, carrying candles and opening the book and all this stuff. And he's really proud, and I think should be. But it's not my tradition. I mean, I could be, as I'm holding my lips sealed, I could be saying he's serving a pagan god. This is ridiculous what he's doing. This is crazy. He's doing stuff that's so contrary to the Bible. Why are you people applauding him? That's nuts. Or I could be a loving uncle and be proud of him and say,
Oh, that's good.
boy, you're really making the family, when you see God, put in a good word for me, make them laugh and things. And I think what I heard John suggest, what keeps us from each other, in my world, it's ego. It's my ego, my determination to show everybody that I'm right, even if it crushes your heart, even if it separates us unnecessarily, even if I'm blowing it out of my butt. I don't even know if I'm right, but darn it, I'm going to win this thing, and I'm going to make you be quiet because I've got this whole practiced essay at the ready on any topic, and I've done that to people. I've done it to my family. My niece wanted me to be the godfather of her first child, and I, in my ignorance, said I can't do that. I can't make a vow that I cannot keep. It's like, for goodness sakes, she's inviting you for dinner. I mean, why are you turning this into a world-changing event?
Yeah.
Separating the church is ridiculous. You just want to win, Vince. Let's be honest. You just want to win.
Yeah.
And so I have taken the stance, and trying to take the stance of, it's better to be loving. It's better on matters that are inconsequential, on little things that really don't make a hill of beans difference. So I rejoiced with my nephew's son. I praised him as best I could, and rejoiced with the family's pride of his new vocation. He's a kid after high school. He's just got his sneakers on. He's serving the mass. But I think for me, that was the better choice than to write a thesis on right doctrine, as I see it, and cast it in his face and say, you better knuckle under, Kai, because you're going the wrong direction. I don't have the right to do that. That's what I think Judas did. Judas is like, I'm following you, Jesus, but boy, do you have this wrong.
Right.
Let me show you how it should have been done. Despite I know they're gonna kill you and beat you for what I'm doing, but I am right after all, because I'm Judas. Judas is never wrong.
Right. Vince, that's in my book, that's wisdom showing you that. You're exactly right.
I would say it's the death of ego.
Yeah.
I get into this orthopraxy thing, but the verse that sticks with me is Jesus says, a good tree can bear good fruit and a bad tree cannot bear good fruit. So I think what we care about our children and people is not so much agreeing with us doctrinally, but that they have good character. God will take care of the rest. I mean, Bob knows character is the center of, if nothing else, success. At least in relationships and how you live. And if you have good character, like the Cornelius, and when Peter went to Cornelius' house, why did he go there? Because he had been giving gifts to the community. He had been doing good things. And Peter goes up to Joppa. Her daughter's a girl died, and the mom showed all the stuff she made for the family. And these were people who were of good character. Now, it's a thin line between trying to earn your salvation. I don't mean that. But I mean, they're showing something of God in them. They don't even know it.
You guys, thank you all again. I've got to step in, and I really appreciate this discussion. Steve, I think my heart breaks for that dear woman who loves her children dearly and wants the best for them, but she's in a really difficult spot. And Vince, for your comments this morning, that was so good, of the choices that are actually, we're going to talk about this next week. This idea of the power of choice. I can choose to lambast another's, this young boy lambasting and doing this, or I can choose to support and take that route. And that's that's what wisdom is leading you, Vince. And that was also very good. So thank you, guys. And next week,
We'll say hi to Totsi first off here.
yeah, I just
I obviously slept through my alarm. So
I think we're all in our Zoom world. I didn't know Totsi was on until I expanded the screen. And Totsi, yes, good to see you. And Carl, you joined us too. So next week is the 23rd, and we'll meet in the next couple of weeks, actually. So guys, thank you for participating, all of you, and for pondering, and we'll pick up next week with
Happy Easter, everybody.
happy
Amen.
Easter. Yeah.
He is risen.
He is risen. Amen.
Yeah, he's risen. That's good news.